Hello from sunny California, and welcome to Los Angeles Greek Film Festival webinar, Filmmakers Guidelines for the International Market. My name is Despina Patrona, and I'm a member of the Los Angeles Greek Film Festival team. Today, I would like to thank and welcome with us entertainment attorney Carol Contis from Contis Law Corporation and Guzman Law Group, PC. Carol T. Contis is a transactional entertainment lawyer who represents clients in her own practice and heads the entertainment department of the Guzman Law Group in Manhattan Beach, where she represents celebrity estates in the continuing exploitation of highly valued intellectual property in film and the Broadway stage, including The State of Rent and Tick, Tick, Boom by playwright Jonathan Larson. Attorney Carol Contis will help filmmakers navigate through the do's, don'ts, and must-do list for smooth development and production so that they are better prepared for international distribution requirements. Just a couple of guidelines. The panel will run approximately 60 minutes. If you'd like to ask a question, please type your name, question in the Q&A function at the bottom bar of your webinar screen. Don't be shy. We are here to answer your questions. Carol, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Welcome to Los Angeles, sort of. Anyway, no matter where you are. I'm going to start out today, and if we can post the entertainment resource list with a list of resources that you can find online that give you information about the film and television business throughout the world, but primarily at the hub in Los Angeles. I started out with what is really the basis of all film work, that's intellectual property. So you'll see the US Copyright Office and the Patent and Trademark Office. Then I have trade information and organizations, the Academy of Motion Pictures, the Television Academy, IFTA, the International Independent Film and Television Alliance, the Producers Guild, Women in Film, Women in Media, Animation Network. But the one thing I want to point out to you is number 3, the international resources. Number 1 on the list is Entertainment Partners. EP has been what I would is a payroll company. They did payroll for large productions since I've been in Hollywood, which is a long time. And they have developed their financial services into a broad array of areas. And on their site, you can find some very, very helpful information about financial incentives that are available around the world. And also, you'll see on that list the Hellenic Film Commission. I'm sure that if there's anyone from Greece watching today, they know about the Hellenic Film Commission, but I also think that the Americans should take a look and see what they have to offer. The OLFI database is really interesting because it too, like the EP database, goes over rebates, tax incentives, etc. The next list is about unions, and these are the American unions and British Actors Equity. These are the unions that you are most likely to confront when you're making a motion picture, whether you're doing it in America or you're doing it anywhere around the world. Just for instance, Screen Actors Guild members, their rule 1 is basically that they will only work if the producer of the film is a signator to the Screen Actors Guild agreement. So that means even for foreign productions. In fact, I just did one within the last year for a major name in America that you would recognize, and the man happens to be trilingual. He has 3 languages, and he did a film in France, and the French producer had to become a signatory to the Screen Actors Guild agreement. So there are lots of ins and outs to that. So I want you to have that website so that you can see what you need to do. Publications and industry information, as you can see, a lot of different things here. I've also put some sites where if you're a screenwriter and you're trying to get your script out there and meet people who can help you to get it out there, where you will find those. And then some of my favorite books, very old fashioned, but there are still books that colleagues and associates have written in the entertainment business that you will like a lot. I love Save the Cat. I always thought that was one of the best books about screenwriting. And I love the name. Just for your information, basically what he's saying is that the hero of your movie or the protagonist or the person you're watching somehow has to do something that makes you want to keep watching him. And in his analogy, it was saving a cat. So that's why it makes me smile. Anyway, that's my resource list. Certainly there are others, but I hope that will help you. And you can click on and scour the internet for all sorts of information about, filmmaking. But now what I'm going to do is to tell you about some of the basics that you need to address when you're attempting to make a film or a television show that will be suitable for international distribution. I will say that America has set many of the standards. Hollywood America and the major distributors that do business around the world have set standards over the years. And now, even with the internet, there are others who are using the same standards. So I'm going to start at the beginning and tell you what this is. First of all, if you have an idea, be aware that ideas are not protectable by copyright. What is protectable is something that is original and captured in a permanent medium. That means written down, filmed, etc. But basically, literary works, music, we're not going to talk about music today, and visual arts. So just having an idea, it probably isn't protectable. Now, as a little aside here, in America, we have a cause of action that's called idea theft. So that you have to meet certain standards on it. But if you go into a pitch meeting and they know why you're there and you know why you're there and you're there to pitch an idea and you pitch your idea and that person steals your idea, you have a cause of action. However, and this is one of the things that I wanted to tell you, is that most places now will require a writer or anyone who is submitting information to a big company to sign what they call is a submission release. And that submission release basically tells the person, hey, we're going to read your material, and if we use it, we will pay you, we'll enter into some kind of deal, we'll make a deal, but you have to acknowledge that you don't have any cause of action against us for using anything that's in that material that is public domain. And we may have a dozen scripts on our shelves that are just like this. So what am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you that what I want you to do is to be careful about where you send your scripts, how you put it out there, and to take all precautions to protect yourself. And what is protection? It's copyright protection. Now, Greece, I know, does not have a system of registry for copyrights. America does. And because we have that system, and also because we're America, and also because we're Hollywood, the world tends to use our system as a public database for all copyrighted material. So my first warning, suggestion to anybody who tells me that they've got a script and they're trying to get it set up is, have you filed it for copyright protection? And if the answer is no, my suggestion is do it now. It's a little bit complicated to go to the copyright office and do it yourself. And by the way, it's on that resource list. Number one, www.copyright.gov. However, it costs $65. And for $65, you protect yourself. And whenever you send out your script, at the bottom, you put copyright, the year, and the name of the copyright holder. And it's like telling everyone, don't mess with me. This is copyrighted material. And by the way, there's another system that is also used. It's called WGA registration. Be aware that the WGA, which is the union that's on strike now, right now, it's the writers union. They have a service for registering your script or other intellectual property, like pitch decks and things like that. And they will issue you a registration number. It really is just a date stamp. Now, that's very good, and it's a valid thing to do, particularly in those countries where they don't have copyright registration, but be aware of the fact it is not of itself copyright. It is just a date stamp. And it costs $25. So if you take 65 and 25, if I can still add, that's $90. For $90, you need to do these acts, protect your script, protect your intellectual property, and put it on the front cover so people know that you've done those things. So that's my first admonition about trying to get your wonderful film made for international markets. And why do you file for copyright protection and not WGA? Because if you file for copyright protection, you have the right to bring legal action in America against someone for infringement. Also, too, I will tell you that there are many production companies and studios and lawyers like me. When somebody brings me a script, the first thing I do is I go onto the copyright office and I see if it's been registered for protection. So it puts the public on notice. I also have to tell you that we're in a changed world now, and people are doing business in co-productions and around the world, etc. And if your work is registered in the US for copyright protection, it's viewed differently. It's viewed as protected works. And I can tell you that I have had one situation that's coming to my mind, that because we copyrighted these very extensive pitch materials that a client had brought to me. It was an animated project, and they had character types and drawings as well as Bible, etc. When it was set up with a streamer, instead of it just automatically being assigned, when it was assigned, there was money that is attached to it. So it had a financial, in that particular instance, it had a financial benefit too. So that's why you file for copyright protection. So now, let's say you've copyrighted your script and you want to go out there and you want to pitch it. You're going to find in the business today that there's all sorts of agreements that are going to be put in front of you. Especially with people that you're collaborating with. We'll talk about collaboration agreements in a moment. But you're going to say, first of all, what is an attachment agreement? And in the entertainment business and films in particular, for the last X number of years where we've had an independent film market that would allow producers to take a package of films with certain stars attached to it and get pre-sale guarantees, the use of an attachment agreement became very important. So oftentimes you will ask an agent to allow their client to be attached to a film so that you can go out and raise financing. There's lots of ins and outs and twists to this, but I just want you to be aware of what it is. It's most often used in connection with talent, and it is something that can be very helpful. Then you're going to say, well, somebody put a shopping agreement in front of me. What's a shopping agreement? Well, a shopping agreement is basically a hold. I used to have a client who called it a hunting license, and he was right. Basically, what a producer will do is say, I want to have an exclusive period of time so that I can go to the market and see what I can do with your property. So it's usually, to make it simple, it's when a little fish goes looking for a much bigger fish, or a medium fish goes looking for a much bigger fish. And usually you're not negotiating all the typical elements of a deal. You're just giving this person, producer, or producing company the opportunity to go out and try and set up the project with the money. Now, I will also tell you, in the last number of years, I have seen shopping agreements change from simple agreements to rather complicated agreements where many terms are pre-negotiated. They can have their problems, but the bottom line with shopping agreements is there is no transference of intellectual property rights, as opposed to a more traditional option purchase agreement. In that agreement, a producer will pay money upfront, and by the way, they can pay money for shopping terms too, but will pay money upfront and has all the terms of the agreement negotiated in that option purchase, so that when the time is right, all the producer has to do is exercise the option, and they own the intellectual property to make the film. Now, that is the more traditional, solid agreement that is used in the entertainment business. However, I can tell you I've been involved with big deals that started out with shopping agreements too. What's the difference with the shopping agreement? And again, they can be very long and difficult and elaborate, but with the shopping agreement, there's no transference of intellectual property rights. Something has to be negotiated when it's the right time, the money's coming in. With the option purchase agreement, the producer has the right to just pay money, and they own the rights. So the power is with the producer, but it's a lot more work up front to negotiate that agreement, and legal fees. So those are the two differences. That's the difference. Excuse me. That's the difference between the two. What also you will see is that what I'm seeing in my practice now, if you are doing a movie that involves real people, whether you're doing a fictionalized account or a documentary, and hold that, we'll talk about documentaries in a minute. I've had people, producers, even before they enter into any kind of a shopping agreement, they want to make sure that all the rights are cleared. And what I'm telling you is that standards can vary all around the world in terms of what rights you need to clear for true life stories. However, if you do not have some kind of an agreement with the person that you are portraying, or the estate of the dead person that you are portraying, it brings on different legal complications down the line. So I'm telling you this up front: if you are screenwriters, filmmakers, etc., it's worth your time and effort to obtain some kind of an agreement with the estates of people or with the real people before you move forward to try and sell your script or write your script. And I'm coming in a little bit early, but the reason is we have something that America and the UK has pushed forward. It's called errors and omissions insurance. And we'll talk more about E&O a little bit later. But I can tell you, without the producer obtaining E&O insurance, nothing gets distributed in America. Even on these small streaming channels that are popping up everywhere, Tubi, Ubi, I mean, there's so many of them, the producer still has to provide that insurance. And on that insurance application, it will ask you a question. The question is there a portrayal of any persons in the film, living or dead, that are real? And if so, do you have an agreement with those people? And if not, why? And if the answer is, oh, this is a documentary, or I'm alleging fair use, that's when the legal fees start coming into play. And you have to have lawyers who give you opinions that you're able to use this in accordance with the law and blah, 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 in order to get that E&O insurance. So again, bottom line, if you're doing something that involves real people, you need to have agreements. And as an aside, I'll take a deep breath and I'll talk to you a little bit about documentaries. I've done a lot of that work also. And you may, in news reporting, for instance, you don't need releases. However, when you're making a documentary, in America at least, if something is important to the public, you can allege fair use. And what's important to the public? Criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, research, etc. But fair use is a defense to a copyright infringement case. It is not, as we say, it's a shield. It is not a source. Did I just say source? It is a shield. It's not a sword. Sorry about that. Not a sword. So if you're going to be alleging fair use, quite frankly, you're going to need a lawyer and a legal opinion. Again, more costs. Now that's for copyrighted material. And then for real human beings, again, if you don't have a release from them or some kind of an agreement with them, you're always leaving yourself open to the possibility of suit. And if you're doing a documentary, you're going to need releases for photos, materials, locations, and also, just as an aside, if you're photographing something and there's a picture on the back wall, that picture could be copyrighted material. And when someone buys a photograph or they buy a painting, they have the right to exhibit it on their wall, but that doesn't mean that they acquired the right from the owner to put it into another medium like a film. So be aware of the fact you need these releases. Now you say to yourself, God, I'm just bored to death, all this release and legal work. Again, what's the point of it? E&O insurance. And why is she talking about insurance again? Because now we're going to talk about distribution. And if we can put up the distribution list here. Let's say that you made your film in Greece and you didn't have to go through all this kind of stuff. And it was a lot easier process. And it's a wonderful film and an American distributor wants it. And they want to take it for America and the rest of the world, excluding Greece, okay? That's a most logical situation. We have a document up here that's called Film Delivery Legal. And as you can see, it is 5 pages. Yes, 5 pages. And this is from a real contract. First of all, you'll see they want formation documents. What's that? Those are the documents that prove that the entity that owns the film is active, it's alive, that you've paid your taxes, and that the person who is signing is the person who owns the entity. Simple enough. Vendor information sheet, this was just something for their internal purposes. IRS documents, believe it or not, you're going to have issues in terms of how you deal with your entity and whether you form an American entity to own the film and enter into this agreement. Again, more legal work, more opinions from counsel, but the distributor is going to want the proper W-9, which is for an American entity, or W-8-BEN for the producer. Assignment of rights. You're going to have to assign the right to distribute the film to the distributor. That's a simple document, but it's just part of the distribution document, not the whole document. Now, these things about copyright mortgage and assignment, you have to prove to your distributor that you own the copyright. And if there is a mortgage on the copyright, and by the way, I'm going back to the US Copyright Office. What's a mortgage? It's like a mortgage on a house. If you have taken a loan to create your movie, and people do this a lot in the independent film world, then the lender might have a lien or a mortgage on that copyright, and it most likely will be filed with the US Copyright Office. So what's the problem with that? the owner of that lien has to subordinate because the distributor wants to be in first position and demands that. Interesting, okay? So these again are complicated legal issues that you'll deal with. Screenplay copyright registration certificate. Well, believe it or not, if you haven't filed your screenplay for copyright protection in the US and you're going to distribute it, you're going to have to file it for copyright now. And how about the motion picture? Have you filed it for copyright protection in the US? If not, again, you have to file it. This is the one that eight is the one that you're going to hear a lot about. Chain of title. What is chain of title? Again, it's almost like real estate. It's proving that the producer that owns the film has the right to enter into agreements on behalf of that film. That's the chain of title, just like proving that you own your house and you have the right to rent it out or whatever. So that chain of title usually is filed again with the US Copyright Office, so it puts the world on notice. Again, you have to prove it for the distributor. Liens, we talked a little bit about liens, copyright and title report. Now here's another expense that you kind of scratch your head and say, gee, the whole world hasn't heard about this. Why does the US do this? Well, we are litigation intensive and law intensive. And before a distributor will take on a film, they're going to want to have a copyright report that's done by a legitimate service or lawyer that's on their list, and there's many of them, to make sure that you are who you say you are, that you actually own the film. Now, again, back to the Copyright Office, they may, what a lawyer does is it searches the Copyright Office and searches the internet with the title of your film to prove that you're the one who owns that film. The title report, what it does, it searches the Copyright Office and the internet to see if there's any other film of that title and that the title is clear for use. And why? Again, here we go, E&O insurance. And just to explain what E&O insurance means, it means errors and omissions. And that insurance, it may sound like a lot of trouble to get, but believe me, it's worth it. It means that if anyone comes out of the woodwork, as we say in America, and sues you and says, hey, that's not his film, that's my film, or you don't have the right to use that, or you didn't get proper clearance, then the insurance company will provide the defense in court. You don't have to go out of pocket to provide that defense. And then what it also means is that the distributor is covered. That's why these things are very, very important. And when you see there's endorsements and coverage, there are also companies that you can add as additional insured on that policy. And that's the reason why it exists. And that's the reason why that you can't distribute anything without having E&O insurance. So we're only at number 14. And 15 is talent agreements. Now, here's a real interesting rub about talent agreements. And I've done work all around the world. I'm just say Spain, France, Serbia, Greece, Italy. And standards vary around the world for talent agreements. In America, however, the distributor will not distribute a film unless all talent agreements have a few basic things. Number one, a provision that specifies that the producer owns all rights in the performance. That's basically what we call in America work for hire provision. Or if it's not work for hire, that all such rights are assigned to the producer. And number two, and the most important thing that I think is that there is no possibility for the talent to bring injunctive relief. What's injunctive relief? It's a court order that says stop. stop the distribution of the film. All people in America who work on a film have to enter into an agreement that says, hey, producer, if you do something wrong, I have the right to sue you for money damages, but I waive my right to injunctive relief. And under no circumstances can I get an injunction to stop the distribution of the film. Now, if that provision isn't in a talent agreement, then they're going to make you go back and get those agreements. And now can we put up the COE? Let's see. No, that's just me. Well, I'll tell you what, there it is. Certificate of engagement. I laughingly call these Band-Aid agreements because basically what they are, they're Band-Aids if the right stuff isn't in the original contract. And why do you use these Band-Aid agreements? So that you get the work for hire provision and the waiver of injunctive relief. Now, I'm going to tell you a twist about this for the international market. In certain foreign countries, mostly in Eastern European areas, putting in a waiver of injunctive relief is a no-go. It can invalidate an entire contract. Honestly, that's how important this is. So how would you expect a Greek or a Serbian or a Hungarian, whoever it is, to have that provision in a contract when it can invalidate a contract? What we do when I'm saying lawyers doing distribution, we require people to sign a certificate of engagement. And if you go down to the bottom, you'll see it's governed by the laws of the state of California, which means that it is not subject to the local laws, it's California law. And on a recent production I worked on in Greece very recently, what I did, and we worked with a wonderful production company in Greece that did all of the agreements, all the actors, everything, except for our American actor who went there. But they took a copy of this, they translated it, they put it at the back of all their contracts, and everyone signed. And I'm using this as an example because it's very important, because now when that film goes for distribution in America, they don't have to go back and look for people and ask them to sign this agreement. They already have it. So I'm pointing that out to you because you need to be aware of these things as you're producing your film, that the international distributors may have some standards and some things that you would never think of if you were filming in Greece or any place else. And that's why it's wise, if you're looking for that kind of international distribution, that you might seek counsel from an American for these kinds of reasons. Now, by the way, as I said, that I call them Band-Aid agreements. I've had a half a dozen films distributed where they didn't have these, and we went back and we got them from everyone. So it's not impossible to do. I'm just telling you up front what's required. And why did I say that? We're now here on number 15, talent agreements. And what did this distributor want? Fully executed agreements for every individual and or entity that is to receive credit. Be aware that any person or entity that receives credit on your film needs to have a contract that goes along with it, just plain and simple. Now, I've had distributors turn the other way and not care about some of the, what I would say below the line crew. There are certain instances, things that they'll turn away from, but definitely anyone who is in the main title credits, that means the credits that come before the movie or in paid advertisements, you better produce those contracts. Now, here's what I wanted to point out to you that is really, really time consuming. When you go to a distributor, and even a digital distributor, and let me make an aside here, the list that I prepared for you came from a distributor, one of the big boys that can distribute in motion pictures, television, home video, if there is any more, digital streaming, etc. Now we have a lot of digital streaming services, and you would think that the requirements would be less. The answer is no, they are not. And I'm looking at this list. It says a complete list of all cast and crew, including contact information, their affiliation to the picture, and union affiliation. Yes, someone has to sit down and prepare that list. I have a young client who made a film pre-pandemic, and with pandemic, everything slowed down, and now it's getting distribution, and we had to go back and certify each one of those people in the cast and crew who rendered services. Why? It's what they need, and they want that information in their files. An approved synopsis. And you think, well, you've got the picture, can't you make your own synopsis? Nope. The producer has to give them the synopsis. An electronic copy of a detailed final dialogue and action continuity. This is the feature DCSL. I won't comment on that. I'm a lawyer. That's all. I don't even understand what that is, but you've got to have one. And then if you look at these other things, again, you would say, I mean, why do I have to prepare a Word file of the main titles exactly as they appear on screen? Same thing with end titles and the billing block. This is because the distributor wants to have information in a file that they can give to their sub-distributors and to their employees, but you have to provide that. My favorite one is the screen credit obligations memo. That means someone has to go through every contract and see what obligations there are to every individual. Now, for instance, you may say to someone, we will give you screen credit in the first position, in the main titles, in a size, style, and type no less than any other actor on the screen, in a size and style no less than the director, on a separate card. All of those things need to be in a memo. Same thing, ditto for advertising, because as you will see in contracts, at least in American contracts, there's an obligation not only to put into the film, but also into paid advertisements. And that too can have provisions such as a first position, size, style, and type, etc. And it's up to the producer to prepare that memo for the distributor. Name and likeness obligations memo. So what is this? Well, sometimes you have obligations that if any other actor is in the paid ad, then I have to be in the paid ad. That's what a name and likeness obligation memo is. So again, they can give this to sub-distributors. Premiere and film festival obligations memo. That's so they can get their tickets together. Dubbing and subtitle obligations memo, a memo that they know if there are any dubbing restrictions. Usually there aren't in movies, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes there's some weird stuff that goes on, so that has to be in there. And cutting and editing obligations. If you've made an agreement with the director that they get first right to cut or edit any foreign versions of the film, you're going to have that memo, or you're going to have a memo that says there are no obligations. Guild affiliation letter and SAG after a final cast report, DGA member list, WGA. Now, these are things that are required for American productions that use American talent. So most of the time, if you're making a film outside the country, these are going to be irrelevant. You'll say they aren't any. However, as I pointed out, where I worked on a foreign film where there was one American actor, you'd have to fill out that form. Guild credit approvals, very interesting. If a guild can have requirements regarding credits, particularly the Writers Guild, a lot of credit requirements. Again, the producer would have to provide that memo. Now, here's something that is going to be required of you that is particular to America. You'll see the nudity and simulated sex writers, minor documentation, Adam Walsh compliance. I'll just put all of these things together. Adam Walsh was a young man who unfortunately was murdered in America, and his father and people put forth a provision. I won't go into the details of it, but in any event, you have to give certification that if there is any sexually depicted activity in your film, that everyone is at least 18 years old. So I'm saying this to you, you may not have to do that in Greece or anywhere else, but you do in America. So again, you may have to go back and get that information. You may laugh at this, but we have the American Humane Association disclaimer. What's that? That you weren't cruel to animals. So that's something that you have to do, which is a good thing. Laboratory access letter, yes, that would be in all agreements. Music cue sheet. Okay. In order for musicians who write music to collect public performance royalties, there are music cue sheets that have to be registered with societies around the world. So you need to have someone prepare this list in a format that is acceptable to the distributor. Of course, they can provide that to you, but be aware that that has to be done. And then in connection with music, every music license has to be executed and provided to a distributor, as well as the composer agreement. Just standard. I love this one. An electronic copy of all song lyrics used in the picture. Hey, don't ask me, but a major studio wanted that. Okay. Out of context music memo. Now, this is the reason that they want all these music documents, because oftentimes when you're licensing a song for a motion picture, they allow you to sync it to the motion picture and use it in context for advertising, but not out of context. Usually out of context costs a lot more. What does that mean? That means if there's a scene and a piece of music is synchronized to that scene, you can use a clip from that scene in advertising, but you can't lift the music out and use it in separate advertising apart from that scene. So that's the requirements for those. And we're getting to the end here. And one of my favorites is the certificate of origin. Okay. It has to do with tax requirements, etc., around the world. So you have to make sure that someone sits down and writes what the certificate of origin is and have it notarized in the country of origin. And shooting script that you can provide. Fact sheet. Okay, what's a fact sheet? The distributor will tell you, but you have to fill it out. And a residual worksheet. Now, for those of you who are producing films without American unions, you will not have residuals, but I can tell you that it is complicated. You need to hire a payroll company to deal with these residuals. And if you're using American talent, it's something that needs to be looked at very carefully by American Council. That's all I'm telling you, because it can be a complicated mess. So I think I'm at the end of this, of all the complications of delivering your film to an American distributor for worldwide distribution, and I'd be delighted to answer any questions. Hi, Despina.
Hi, Carol. Wow, that was just so informative. We do have a lot of questions coming in from
Okay.
audiences. So
Okay.
one of the first questions that we have is, when a rewrite happens with a copyright, with a copywritten work, what percentage of change do you need to copyright that material again?
And actually, any change, any substantial change needs, you need to re-copyright it. However, think about this. If you get a screenplay and then you start fooling around with the screenplay and you change it, and then you turn it into a motion picture, to the extent that those changes are embodied within the motion picture copyright, they're covered.
Great. So The next question is, what is considered the origin of a film, especially in the case of international co-production?
Interesting point. The official co-production partners would have the origin of film. It would be one or the other. I honestly, it's now that you say that, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to post it online because I did one. I didn't ask the question because it wasn't me. I did one that was Italy and Canada, and the Italian and the Canadian lawyers did that. I had a part in it, but I'm going to ask my Canadian counsel.
Excellent.
I think what happens with this is that one of the countries has to choose, but I could be wrong. But I want to, that's interesting. The reason I'm mumbling and grumbling about it, because if you think about it, if the country is claiming ownership or origin for purposes of getting tax rebates and financing, I would think that they would have to claim that they're the country of origin for purposes of going around the world. But I'm going to ask that question. Don't know. Thank you. I'm going to learn something.
Another question coming in from, some of them have their names, some of them don't.
That's okay.
One of them is Lefteris Kazaklis, and he says, "Great webinar, Ms. Contes. I would like to know if all these apply to all genres like documentaries, which is a main genre we focus on our production company. If so, how many of these legal obligations can be acquired after the end of a production? For example, we want to distribute a historical documentary series that the production of ended 2 to 3 years ago. What are the steps to acquire all these obligations?"
It's basically what you would call as clearance, and it's clearance after the fact. And although it can be a daunting job, it's not impossible. I've done it. I've got a big smile on my face because I had someone bring me a film. I will leave the European country unnamed, that was completed and ready to be finally edited. And they had 0 contracts. Yes, you heard me, 0. But guess what? We got it all done and we delivered it to a major distributor. So it can be done. But basically, it's an organizational job. To sit and have a lawyer review what you've done, what is necessary, and to keep in mind where you're going for distribution, because the requirements may be a little bit higher.
Wonderful. Moving on to the next question. How does a producer become SAG signatory?
Oh, that's easy. You call them, they send you a stack of paperwork, so you sign documents, and you usually have to give them money.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that people don't realize, is that they require oftentimes for the foreign production bonds. What is a bond? It is a guarantee that either you're going to pay the actor, or a guarantee, even if you pay the actor, they still want the bond. Then they say, well, it's for the payment of residuals, to guarantee that you'll pay the residuals. And they take that money and they hold it in their account and they collect interest on that money. It's
And
just,
how much that usually costs?
well, last one I did was 50 grand.
Wow.
On top of the medium 6 figures that we had to pay the actor.
Wow.
Unlike a $5 million film.
It's pretty pricey, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I'm dealing with something now, a small movie that independent film, where they didn't pay residuals for a number of years, and then SAG will bring a suit against the producer. And it's so complicated in order to figure out where it's been distributed, where it's gone. We have to have all the documents, and you send it to a payroll company because it is complicated. Not only do you have American taxes, you have certain media that is subject to residuals on one basis, and then the rates are different for another media. It's just craziness, real hard. But the answer is no big deal. All you need to do is hire a lawyer and have a checkbook. We'll take care of you.
Yes. So another question that we have coming in is, an idea is not protectable, but it is a written protectable idea, or does it have to be expounded upon?
Well, I love the use of language, and I love the way that this person has asked it. It really has to be more than a simple idea, and how complex it is, and how expounded it is in a written medium is always a subject of debate. So we also have something called the doctrine of independent creation, where two people can create the same idea at the same time without ever having talked to each other. So the answer is that there's no specific answer, except that it has to be enough to have original creativity in it. And it's actually an excellent question, because I can tell you that when there are copyright infringement suits, that the courts will look at what was taken and whether what was taken was just a general idea that is not protectable, or whether specifics were taken. So it's an excellent question. It's not easily answered, but it's one of the reasons that I say that your ideas should be put into at least a one sheet typed on a permanent medium and registered for copyright or filed with the Writers Guild.
Wonderful. You're just so informative and thorough in how you're answering all of these questions. Our audience is really excited. We have another one coming in from Lauren Dascalos. Hello, she says.
Hi.
And she asks, if we were to use photos that are from a newspaper for a film, would we have to get rights from the paper and the person that is pictured?
No, let me clarify that. Just because the photo is in a newspaper doesn't mean that the newspaper owns it, doesn't mean that the newspaper took it. The law of photographs is the person who took the photograph is the owner of the copyright in that photograph. So you would have to get permission to utilize that photograph from the owner of that copyright. That's number one. And then the question is, do I need clearance from the person who's in it? This is where it gets to be fuzzy. Now, when I have represented documentarians, I have always insisted that they get releases from everyone who has a photo inside their documentary, just to make life easier. Because if you don't have that release, then what are you relying on? You're relying on fair use. So fair use, again, is a shield. It's not a sword, which means that you wait for somebody to sue you and then you assert fair use. And how are you going to get the E&O insurance if you don't have a release from that person? So my answer is try and get releases from everyone. If you don't, then you have to hire a lawyer to do a fair use letter.
Excellent response. I hope that answered your question, Lauren. Moving on to the next question. If you film an event with speakers for a documentary outdoors and there is no sign indicating that you cannot film, can you use what you filmed?
Boy, that's interesting. Public event. My first question is use how? And are you going to use it in a feature film? Are you going to use it in a documentary? Are you going to try and sell it to news? You know, what is the use? And if there are no signs, well, then there's no expectation of privacy in public, I would say, in that situation. So I don't think anyone's going to be suing you for invasion of privacy. But if you don't have a location agreement, that there might be some kind of I'm thinking carefully, action against you for filming on their location, but your defense would be, hey, there's no sign that says we can't do it. Come on. Everybody's got a phone. Get over it. And then if you're filming people who are speaking, again, I would say that it is going to depend upon the end use. That would have to be analyzed. It probably is going to come to nothing, so don't worry about it. Probably, however, need more details to analyze it.
Yeah, that is a really, really tricky and sensitive topic, especially when you're filming and there is no trespassing sign, or
yeah,
you don't know. You have to kind of use common sense. Moving on to the next question. Peter Nikos says, Brava, Carol and Despina. Thank you.
Thank you.
As always. And is a story idea expressed as an outline or just story beats written out, copyrightable and protectable? And then he wishes us a beautiful weekend.
You know, I have to tell you, this answer is the typical lawyer's answer. It depends. And again, this is what's so interesting, is that you have to have something with substantial creativity and originality to have copyright. So we'd have to look at it and see what it is. Generally, I would say it's probably okay, although one individual beat out of it may not be protectable by copyright, but as a whole, it probably is. Oh, and by the way, if you're at your outside event and you're filming, you own the copyright in that film. But what the person was asking for questions was really the clearance of the individual elements of that film. And so, boy, that really has to be examined on a case-by-case basis. And yes, copyright anything, whether it's an outline or it's a beat sheet, it doesn't make any difference. You can file for copyright protection. Whether it will be granted, how would you know if it wasn't copyrighted? You'd have a lawsuit and somebody's going to be suing you, and then you'd be analyzing each one of those elements. But until there's some kind of a conflict, you're not going to know.
Thank you, Peter, for your question, and we wish you a beautiful weekend as well. Moving on to our next question, Carol, even if we have copyrighted our work, do we really have the ground to fight a big production company that has all the legal resources in the world?
Oh, interesting point. Yeah. The 300, what we used to call, as I say this, I don't mean to be hurting gorillas, but we've got 300-pound gorilla, and you're a small guy. Point taken. Absolutely. No, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And it depends, and then would be depending how strong your case is, and how strong it is that they copied your work. They may not have copied your work. Again, the independent creation doctrine, so lots of ifs on this, but you're absolutely right. When you go to fight one of the big boys, I keep saying big boys, but maybe that's not the right, it's from my era. That's my era. Okay. When you go to fight one of the monsters, you have to have the resources to back it up.
Yeah, it can be intimidating, and it can even drag on for many years.
Forever.
And you may not even have the resources, or maybe want to spend the resources on something like that, and you'll have to let it go and move on to something that you can be challenged with.
Absolutely.
The next question is, does substantial involve characters, location, references, specific elements, etc.?
Usually, yeah.
Okay. Another question is, in the last few years, and especially in Europe, there seem to be many co-productions. A project film has many owners as a result.
Yes.
How does one capture intellectual property, IP, and how is this IP divided across the various co-producing entities?
That's a subject of negotiation. The reason that there are co-productions is that there are countries that have co-production treaties with each other, and they iron that out between each other with those treaties. And also, when you have those co-productions, there's certain financial benefits that come from it, which is why those people want to do business with each other. But that is a matter of negotiation.
Excellent. Moving on to our next question is, are there international laws that can assist in IP protection and make it easier for the IP owner to protect their assets?
Yes, we have what happens. This is a complicated, I'm not the best source for all the different intellectual property laws around the world, but we do have the Berne Convention, which is between member companies that agree that they will honor copyrights between states, and they have certain standards that are set. So if you have a copyright registration in America, it should be honored around the world. It's not a matter that it won't be honored. And one of the reasons that I am, jump up and down and say, please copyright your materials, because we have public records and you can see it easily. So yes, people cooperate with each other.
Carol, we have time for one more question. And thank you again to our audience that has joined today and asked so many informative questions. There are so plenty, but I'm unfortunately I'm only able to take one more. So our last question will be, um, how does let me see. Would a release that I write or find on the internet do or do you advise us to get a lawyer and draft the release?
Oh, get a lawyer, please. Those things that you find on the internet, they're trying to be general and apply to all circumstances. And I'm sorry, I just think that if you're producing something and you want the proper advice, use a lawyer, use an entertainment lawyer. I mean, I've drafted things. For instance, okay, I drafted that COE. Actually, I didn't draft it. It came from a studio. And I have California law in there, but you know what? If I got rid of California law, it would be a whole different situation for that European person who signed it. I may have a problem. Also, too, it didn't have a credit provision in it. So you see the COE on, or it had a credit provision, but it wasn't specific. It wasn't specific enough. And I'm just saying that anything that you get off the internet, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it may not be tailor-made to your circumstance.
I'm going to take one more last question.
Sure.
You can ask about Greece. What do you think, Carol, are the challenges in distribution, the do's, don'ts, must do's that we need to know about Greece, since we're also passionate in bringing more jobs and providing more filmmaking in Greece?
Well, I think in terms of filmmaking in Greece, you've got it covered between these tax incentives that they have. I mean, it's just booming all over, which is fabulous. And I think that really what needs to, what needs to happen is that the Greeks themselves need to become skilled and educated professionals in those services that need to be provided to Greece. So there's room for more production companies that what you call executive producers. There's a lot of room, absolutely. In terms of protecting yourself, I don't know if you have to protect yourself against anything. I will tell you, however, one thing, I would like to see more Greek content produced for larger audiences. And for that to happen, all of you young screenwriters out there, you need to see what the international standards are for screenwriting and try and learn them. By the way, I will look at a Greek movie. By the way, I loved the documentary about the refugees. Oh my gosh, I was crying for hours after that. And I loved the winner. I loved Akusa. However, the one issue that's real different, and it's not just Greece, it's the European film, is the pacing. We have different pacing with American cinema. And so this is just me. I think that it's not such a bad idea to study abroad and understand what you're trying to achieve, because the Greek stories, there's fabulous stories, absolutely fabulous. And I'd love to see more content.
Me too. There's so much. I just love being transported back home and seeing all these beautiful sceneries and stories that are so passionate and so timely.
Yes.
And in what we're dealing with today.
Very much so.
This has concluded our panel for today, and it was so much information packed in one webinar. I'd like to thank you, Carol.
My pleasure.
And your nuggets of wisdom for all of us, very inspirational. A lot to take in, and I hope everybody had their coffee today.
Yes.
And I just want to use this platform and quickly want to wish LAGFF and GGFI happy birthday, Chronia Pola, to Ari Katopodis today.
Yes.
Celebrating his birthday. We love you, and we just thank you for everything that you do for us. This discussion has been recorded and will be posted in our website soon at www.lagff.org. Please sign up for our newsletter, our social media, follow us on Facebook and on Instagram, or go to our website too. Thank you again for joining us, and see you soon.
Thank you. Yes.